Let's look at expanding brackets. Now, to expand brackets, what that actually means is to multiply either two brackets together like this. It might be three brackets at times, or it might even be something just outside one of the brackets, a number and a bracket. So let's try this expanding two brackets, meaning we have to multiply everything in the first bracket by everything in the second. So the way we go about this is to say, okay, let's do the first terms first. So x times x would be x squared. Then we can do the first term and the second term of that one. So x times minus 4, remember this minus sign goes alongside the 4, that belongs to the 4. So that gives us minus 4x. Then we take the second term here and multiply it by the x, and that's a plus 3 times x, so that gives us plus 3x. Then we take this term here and we multiply it by 4. So we're going to just get a number now, because that means 3 times 4, and it's a plus 3 times a minus 4, and that becomes minus 12. Now we haven't quite finished, because what we've got to do now is simplify this expanded bracket. Now, to simplify it, what we have to do is to collect the terms that are what we call like terms. That's a fancy mathematical way of saying we gather the x squared terms together, the x terms together, and the numbers together. Well, we've only got one x squared term, so we will put that down as x squared. But we've got two x terms with numbers in front of them. Minus 4x plus 3x. And that's really another way of saying 3x minus 4x. So whichever way you want to look at that, it actually is minus 1x. Minus 1x. And then we've just got one number at the end, which is minus 12. Now normally, if we've just got minus 1x, we don't need to have the 1 there, we can just say minus x. And that's that bracket expanded. Okay, x squared minus x minus 12. So let's have a look at a slightly more complicated one. Let's have a look at this one. Supposing we have 2x minus 3 and x plus 5. So now what we have, we've got to do the same thing again. So we'll take the 2x and we'll say 2x times x. So that gives us 2x squared. We'll now take the 2x times the plus 5. And now we have to multiply the 5 times the 2 together to get 10, and then multiply that by the x. So that gives us, well, let's write it out in full, 2x times 5. Notice the difference between the x and the multiplication sign. And then we'll come back to that in a minute. And then we'll take this and say minus 3 times x, so that's minus 3x. And finally, minus 3 times plus 5 gives us minus 15. So let's just write this out again, the whole equation. So 2x squared plus 5 times 2 is 10 times x is 10x minus 3x minus 15. The reason I did that is to show you why we have to multiply the 2 times the 5, because we've got a number 2 in front of the x and a 5 there. So we've got to multiply the numbers together and then multiply it all by x. Now we can collect our x squared terms. We've only got the 2x squared. Plus 10x minus 3x, that gives us plus 7x. Because 10 minus 3 is 7, which is really, it's like saying 10 lots of x minus 3 lots of x. And that gives us 7 lots of x. And then we have minus 15. And that's how we expand the bracket. Just one more before we look at factorising. And we'll look at this. If we might have 3x in one bracket, and perhaps we might have plus 7, and then perhaps we might have 2x in the other bracket, minus 1. So let's see how this works out. we've got 3x times 2x, so we times the 2 and the 3 together to make 6. And we've got the x times the x, which is squared, x squared. So that gives us 6x squared. Then we'll times the 3x by the minus 1. So 3 times the minus 1 gives us minus 3. So that gives us minus 3x. Then let's take this term, multiply it by the 2x, gives us plus 14x. And then the 7 times the minus 1 gives us minus 7. So to simplify it, it's 6x squared. And then we've got minus 3x plus 14x. Remember, the minus belongs to the 3x. So it's like saying 14x minus 3x. And that gives us plus 11x. And we've got a number at the end, minus 7. Okay, so that's how we do it. Now, as long as you multiply each of these terms by the other terms, you're okay. So it's quite useful to say, okay, I'm going to multiply that term by that term, and then that term by that term, and then look at this one, and then say, right, I'm going to multiply that term by that term, and then this term again by that term. So in whatever way you do it, have a little method that works for you. I'm going to show you a method now which some of your teachers might show you, and we'll just rub out these lines in case they become confusing. And this is a method called FOIL. You may have heard of this, F-O-I-L. And this stands for first, outside, inside, last. And it's just a useful way of remembering which order to do them in. So the first terms are this one and this one. The outside terms are this term and that term. The inside terms are these two, and the last terms are that one and that one. Now, this may or may not help you. If it doesn't help you, then really don't worry about it. And sometimes it's hard to remember these little gimmicky things than it is to remember the actual thing. So whichever way you do it, whichever method, you just have to learn a method which works for you. In a moment, we're going to come back and look at factorising, which goes hand in hand with expanding brackets.